In her essay, Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema, Laura Mulvey's main argument was that Hollywood, and Bollywood by extension, is a dream factory that produces images for the visual pleasure of men. Do you think this has changed for Indian cinema in the last few years?
Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, of course. You see many, especially in the last 2-3 years, many shows and films which are, I think, very consciously moving away from that. And I think streaming has contributed to that. I think big theatrical releases were the ones, and people said audiences want it. But yes, definitely in the subjects and the films and the shows that you're watching, I definitely think that there is a different kind of visual language, characterization that's happening now.
And pleasure.
And pleasure.
Yeah, I think Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara has been visual pleasure, which Zoya created. You know, when you say visual pleasure, I was just like imagining just all the men on a road trip, and you know, that film really stands out for me as visual pleasure.
I think the definition of visual pleasure for men is also changing because of the narratives that we are setting, the kind of cinema the current generation is sort of bringing in, and the kind of stories that the wonderful filmmakers out here are doing. I think वो थोड़ा उनका भी perspective change हो रहा है कि you know, this could also be a source of pleasure. Seeing a murderer or a woman cop like Shefali Shah in what was the series? In Delhi Crime. It was a visual pleasure only, na? But वो थोड़ा terminology change हो रहा है, and I think this credit goes to OTT. And I think men are even loving the kind of roles that women are also doing. And they don't realize, but when they go to the theaters, the same roles are played by men. But now on OTT, they're played by women, and they're enjoying it equally, if not more.
Actually, there's one aspect of this that I want to say. What everybody is not realizing is it's a door that swings open both ways. So if it liberated and did certain things for women, it liberated and did a lot of stuff for men characters and that as well, which I think is important to also see.
Of course, like with Patalok and with so many other series, you have the protagonists who don't look a certain type, but they're running the entire show on their shoulders. Harshad Mehta, I mean, so many of them, you know, entire things, a lot of things are changing.
Sure. Okay. So, again, OTT platforms like Netflix have become a sort of leveler, creating space for writers, directors, and actors to be bolder in their approaches and tell more diverse stories. Do you think mainstream cinema is on its way to getting there?
We'll see in the coming years, because that's the transition we're going through. Like whatever we've been through and whatever growth or evolvement has happened as makers and as an audience, I think we still need to see what really happened. At least that's what I feel, that we've still not, everything feels in transition right now. Definitely people are thinking about, okay, if content has changed and this is what is being consumed on OTT, then what needs to come to a theater? Theaters will never go away, but they will hopefully evolve.
See, I'm not a film. Sorry.
No,
Go. Okay.
I actually wanted to say something, not because Tahira is here, but I do think Ayushmann is changing one stereotype after another in mainstream cinema, one topic at a time. So definitely in the mainstream that is cooler and a conversation is valid. And even now when you see Badhai Do, you know, that it's definitely mainstream conversation.
And I enjoy the memes. After every role he does, like, all you need is a weird setting.
He's a genre. Ayushmann has now become a genre himself. So, you know, I just feel that I'm not a filmmaker in that sense. But I feel what is happening is that streaming platforms are giving you the chance to make diverse content. But that does not necessarily reflect on mainstream cinema right now. Because if you look at some of the mainstream hits that have happened, the blockbusters, so to say, they are very massy, they're very like, you know, they're very massy, they have the hero who's larger than life, they have all the tropes, honestly, of 80s cinema, which we have said that, oh my God, that is so outdated, this will never work, but it's working. You know, it is working. So I feel it's a little more complex than that. So you will have this content which is doing very well on OTT, but you will also have that massy mainline entertainer with a hero who's like that and exploding cars and all. I think is in fact even stronger.
I think we are a country of diverse liking, and no liking is going to be similar. So there would be in one home itself, you would have three different people having three different tastes. Either it's food or it's television, and even now coming to the OTT platforms. I do feel that theatre is more of an event kind of film, where people will go more for the experience of watching film together, and also which gives you an adrenaline rush in terms of what happens there. So, like she was saying, whether it is those big visuals or it is something which just evokes some kind of emotion in a group viewing is what is there. So theatres are not going to go anywhere, and because of the diverse consuming habits we have in viewership, but there is something called choice, and there's something called should I watch it now or should I watch it later? So that's going to be there now, because initially you didn't have that choice. Now you have that.
Can I ask you the same question actually? Yes. What do you think? Do you think streaming is going to change the way movies in theatre? You're a young person.
Yeah.
I want to know from you, what do you think?
So, I mean, honestly, it's the same thing for me. It's about choice. I want to watch a movie on my terms. I like to stop and discuss it with people, text my friends. Like, sometimes you watch things together. So it's exciting to kind of, like, we text each other, like, are you seeing this? Are you seeing this? In a theatre, it's not a setting to, like, stop and have. Then you can, like, go and make something for yourself, come back and watch it. So I feel like, even though theatre watching is an experience, I feel like the same thing happens because you're doing so, like, the whole experience of watching at home is different because you can create that for yourself. In a theatre, it's kind of given to you, right? So, I mean, that's my...
Netflix watch party.
Okay. So, I mean, just riffing on that, what is a film that each of you would like that's a theatre experience for you?
For me, any of the super... what's it called? So my kid will like bug me.
Avengers.
Spider-Man. Those are the
True,
ones
yeah.
to watch. Those I think definitely
Yeah.
need to be watched in a theatre.
With
And that's how
3D
my life.
and with
Yeah.
effects and
Yeah.
with heavy visual.
Yeah, so I do feel that, like I said before, event films, which is spectacular in terms of visuals, it has a lot of VFX, a lot of drama in terms of the visual effects, which cannot be encompassed on a small screen.
And popcorn doesn't have the same fun at home.
Yeah. So, for example, I do not know where it released, but 1917 is something which, if I had watched it in theatre, would have a different kind of experiences, because the shot of that one shot of them going and how it happens, and the whole episode would never be the same when you're watching it on your phone. or
I
your
just
tablet.
feel that to put in that all of us as filmmakers, we put our heart and soul into it, our life genuinely into it. And as women filmmakers and producers and writers and directors, there is a point to prove also, genuinely, because what a man can take a loo break, but I can't do it. I don't want to sound that I cannot do this. So we put so much at stake, and when we create this content piece, and when it is viewed on phones, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. But that's what the world has come to. I feel every film, whether it's small or big, there is a dream of every filmmaker for people to view it as a community and for it to come on the big screen. For me, every film deserves that.
I get that as a writer, it's different when it comes in print and then we see it online.
Correct, है ना?
Like that.
See, it's the same thing. It's actually
So,
Netflix पे आके बोल दिया मैंने, पर निकालना
You're
मत.
making me miss watching movies in the theatre. I don't think I've gone
Yeah,
for
but
more than 2
nothing
years
beats
now.
the theatre.
But yeah.
No,
theatre
but for me
experience
also, I mean, the whole experience is,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a visual spectacle or anything.
Yes.
The collective experience for me so I remember films I've seen in the theatre.
Yes.
When I'm watching on OTT, so many times I feel like, shayad dekhi hai, I don't know. Then I watch it halfway and I say, oh yeah, I saw this.
Yes.
Because there's no memory attached to it. Because I just saw it on the go. Whereas theatre was an outing, there was a whole memory attached to it. So I know I have much more recollection of films that I saw in the theatre.
Theatre is like a commitment. You're making that commitment.
okay. Okay, so I mean, I also want to talk about like sexual pleasure and but see, so a true depiction of women in the depths of sexual pleasure is often constructed by women directors. Even the most sensitive male directors often pander to the male gaze without meaning to. Earlier, steamy scenes would be cut in the theater or when the movie would be broadcast on TV. But lately, OTT platforms like Netflix are creating new frontiers of what pleasure on screen looks like. And there's been a rising trend of showing sexual pleasure from the female gaze. Do you think this will aid in the creation of a more sex-positive Indian society?
कौन करेगा ये आंसर? No, I think there is also a wave of this intimacy directors coming in, and I would not limit this to just the female directors. You know, there are a lot of polarized opinions on Gehraiyan. You can love it, you can hate it, you can tear it apart. Right now the world is totally divided. I think politics से ज़्यादा गहराइयाँ कैसे लगी है सबको is the main thing. But the thing is, there is a male director who shot this entire thing, and I do not see it as a male typical gaze. So which goes on to say that there are very sensitive men also who have a sensitive way of showing, and it just is not for the sexuality. There is a lot of depth, meaning, complexities which also come across, which is usually attributed to the female gaze, but men can do that, and they do too. I think all it needs is a higher EQ.
And I think any amount of discussion of sex is less. We have to normalize it. I think we are still not doing it from a normalized place. We are still doing it from an exotic place where, oh, it's forbidden and it's so much fun, let's do it. You know, it's, and now we've got the freedom to do it, so let's just do it and we'll just, you know. So I think that has to be normalized, specifically in India. We were in denial of this for so many years. I mean, to show that people had sex, we used to have flowers touching each other. We are the country of Kama Sutra. Where did we go?
Yeah.
You know, so any amount of that from any gaze, just normalize it and get it out of the way. And, you know, I think it will really cure at least some of the suppression that is
the first
there.
visuals was of Parched only.
Yes,
I
Parched
saw
was beautiful.
Parched was the time when I think all these scenes were
Yeah.
normalized, and it just comes from the filmmaker.
I think the flaw in that is to think of India as one India.
Yeah.
There will always be people who will be pissed off. There will always be people. But I think, like Leena says, it's important to kind of
It has to become
normalize
a matter
it.
of fact. You know,
I
it
mean,
can't be
Parched,
like-
when it released here, the first thing was sex scene leak. I refused to give a comment because then they'll say, oh, you only planted it to publicize. So it's still we are in this situation of sex, you know. So I didn't give a comment on that. But I met somebody like in Khajuraho, one guide, who asked me, why do I have this photograph of Parched? And he says, लोगों ने मेरे को बोला ये पिक्चर देखने के लिए बड़ा सेक्स है, दिमाग खराब हो गया, बाद में सेक्स तो देखा नहीं कुछ. So I mean, you know, if we normalize it, we'll get past it.
Okay.
So, you know, Netflix has this thing on top-rated films, you know, the 1, 2, 3 and all. And for the longest time, there was 365 Days, which was on number one. There was Sex Story.
There's also Dark Desire.
Dark Desire.
I'm not watching all this.
Yeah, Dark Desire.
Just
Sex Story.
permutations created for your watching. What have you been watching, Ashwini? Why is it popping only for you?
No, that's okay.
I'm judging.
Yeah, it's an algorithm.
It's an algorithm. Now we
No,
know.
no,
Yeah,
that
of
was
course we watch
it
all
was
of it.
like it was all over in the news.
Why
Yeah.
not?
So in
Yes.
this room, I'm sure everyone has watched it.
Yes.
And it's important to put it out there, like everyone is saying, it's to just normalize it. Oh, another example would be normalizing period, and now openly saying that, hey, I have my period, so just stay away from me. You know, in terms of just being open about it. Others initially we wouldn't even like talk about period. Oh, okay, you know.
We
just
had
keep
all
quiet
these
about
names
it.
for it,
Yeah.
chums.
No, girl problem, women problem or something.
Now, yeah, exactly. So now, even during shoots and everything, if there is a problem, there is a problem.
Yeah.
And if you're having your period, you talk about it and you say, no, just chill. So it's important to normalize everything and just talk as if it's just normal human behavior, human psychology, which happens.
Yeah, I think the whole idea of even, you know, the first scene of Masaan and the whole conversation is normalizing sex and having a relationship in small town India, and then how are women treated. So I think when people only talk about that is a sex scene is a problem, that is watering down. But like Leena and everybody said, it's really important to, to show lives as they are. So yeah. And
There was this, only yesterday I was talking to someone and we were discussing Hyderabad blues. And that was like that one scene I think everyone would remember, where the girl and the guy are kissing and everything. And it was a moment which was discussed because it was a very forward kind of film during that time by Nagesh Kuknur. So when now that kissing is like, okay, big deal. So I think everything has its time and it just normalizes the more we don't make a big hoo-ha of it. But there will always be someone or the other who would have a point of view on what is correct and what is incorrect and how it should be. So, but that's the part and parcel of a storyteller.
Okay, I think they're hurrying me up, so I'm going to ask my last question. Last two actually, but just we'll wrap it up soon. There's been a lot of talk lately of movies that haven't aged well. And according to you, should we hold them to today's standards or accept them as lessons and move on?
Haven't aged well as in you watch something from the 90s which is not, it doesn't feel like today.
No, for example, the characters will be problematic. For example, a running refrain is in Dilwale Dulhania Le Jayenge, Shah Rukh Khan was
Actually, Tahira was talking about this, that, from many years back, how she romanticized Man, and then she recently saw it. Please talk about it.
Same. Same. No, so how as kids you romanticize a certain kind of film, and that's the tonality which is set for you as youngsters, and then you feel this is what it is. A knight in shining armor will come, and even tumhara no doesn't mean a no because he will be persuasive, and then finally you will give in. At that time I had romanticized, but today when I just want to watch that film again because of the songs also, very honestly. And then when I started watching, I realized two things: that one of the girls is my neighbor, and the second thing is, what the hell are they doing? The main guy is basically क्या कहते हैं वो दिल फेंक सा होता है. What is the English word for it, bro?
Philanderer.
Yeah.
Casanova.
Casanova. As like कुछ C से तो
He's
शुरू
a
होता है.
bully and
So, yeah, and he's like, and it's not even that he's talking. He's like pulling, pushing, shoving. There's an entire song where Amir Khan and Manisha Koirala, she doesn't want to be with this man. She has said no umpteen times, but this man still has a song, and he twists her around, and in the entire song she's distraught. And I was just shocked. I'm very sure the characters, even they themselves today, will not be able to relate to it, and neither will the filmmakers. And I really wish the audience also moves on. But there's certain films, regressive films that are
things
made
that
and
you
they're
thought
doing
were
wrong.
romantic are offensive if you remove.
It even goes to even define caste system, like films like Sound of Music. I think from many years ago, it has been like a certain community, a certain color of people are supposed to serve, while a certain color of people are, the privileged ones. So that was the pop culture, and that is the definition at that point of time. But we've moved past that, and this generation now is defining the pop culture post the Me Too movement, which is about expanding the conversation, inclusion of minority, be it LGBTQI plus community, or be it more women, or be it a Dalit representation. And I think all these are conversations that are very important to have. Not that films have to change the world, not that films can change the world, but this is really important conversation to have, to constantly expand the vision of pop culture. And that's where the coming generation and all of us as creators are more aware of what we are putting out on the screen.
But we also have to stay away from cancel culture, because that happens too often. Like what happened with Edith Blyton, for instance, because there are a lot of things which are of course problematic, her racism, ye wo, and also some of the films.
J.K. Rowling.
Or J.K. Rowling's views on trans people and all. But you cannot cancel the body of work completely. You can't do that. So like you said, maybe you keep the parts that work for you and move on. Because they were a product of those times. To constantly examine things through the filter of now and then have a problem with everything, it's going to be a huge problem. So I have an issue with that also. I have an issue with cancel culture. So yeah.
Okay, last question. On the occasion, because this will air on International Women's Day, what is the one change each of you wishes to see in Indian cinema?
We are blank.
We are the change. We want to see more of our work on Indian cinema.
I want to see romance back. We've stopped making good romances. It's not a change. I really want to return. Like, we just don't make like love stories. Like, I want to.
I'd like to see, really interesting female characters across all narratives. Now there's no excuse that it's a Masi film. So, in any narrative, even if the male is the protagonist, I want to see women characters who are doing something, saying something, are something.
I definitely,
Yeah.
I definitely want to see more women friendships.
Right. Kind of like riffing off of that, can like each of you tell me which was like your favorite female character in an Indian movie?
I like Thappar. Thappar, no, with Tapsi recently. Sorry, the way I pronounced it was all wrong. No? Sorry, I have this like that pakoda wala problem. I can't say it properly. That's I can't say Dharkan also. Whatever. So yeah, I like that film a lot. I felt like her character also was. I think that was a well written film. Yeah.
Anyone else?
I think Piku.
Yeah, Piku, of course.
I think if I say so myself, I'm really proud of Pagglait.
Yes, Pagglait.
And Sandhya in Pagglait.
I'm not been watching so many films, but I loved Shefali in Delhi Crime.
Yeah.
I thought she was very good.
I loved Supriya in Tabbar.
Oh, Tabbar
Supriya.
is, yeah.
It's
Tabbar is-
fantastic.
Yeah,
I've yet to watch that. I'm going to go watch.
yeah, it's a lovely series.
Okay, that's it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.